Satya Dhamma Reflection on June 7th, 2022. No grasping for any states, for any conditions, for any attributes themselves, that which has been classified as states of mind or states of Dhamma. They don't grasp themselves. Dhamma doesn't grasp itself. Any condition doesn't grasp itself. No grasping, even the non-grasping itself. This will be without flaw. The unwinding discards itself. The emptiness doesn't grasp itself. The liberation doesn't grasp itself. This will be without flaw. To be obsessed with significance and meanings, it will continue to be the seed of the samudaya. The liberation or the detachment doesn't grasp itself, child. The putting down, the emptiness doesn't grasp itself. Dhamma doesn't grasp itself, child. Everything doesn't grasp itself as it is. No grasping, even the non-grasping is as it is. Therefore, non-attachment doesn't grasp itself either. The non-attachment doesn't grasp itself. Nothing is within the non-attachment itself. This will be deliberate cut through. The non-attachment is not itself, child. It doesn't grasp itself. The non-attachment is not about grasping for itself. Nothing is within the non-attachment itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself. No grasping even to the non-grasping itself. This is not about searching for anything. To be obsessed with that, it will be samudaya in itself. It is the samudaya within the searching. Desire, delusion is all about samudaya. Is not itself, child. No is not the no itself. No is not no itself. Cutting within the cutting itself. Cut through the cutting itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself will seize the samudaya for both long or short desire, or that projecting mind, the soaring mind. It is done by the seeing, the knowing. This is the overlaying of the samudaya. Disregard even from the disregard itself. This is the conclusion of Nirodha. The non-attachment is not itself. Let's conclude through Nirodha and Nibbana. Then it will not be about something attempting to attach or detach naturally. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself, all the same to everything. It will not be about anything within attachment or detachment all by itself. Naturally, it will not be about anything within attachment or detachment, uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself, all the same to everything. The non-attachment is not itself, all the same to everything inside and outside. Without disregarding, the samudaya will be restless, moving here and there. So let's uninvolve with disregard or not, so that the samudaya will not be straying here and there, to be obsessed in such a way. It is the desire, delusion and delusive attachment which is the samudaya, which is straying. Disregard even from the disregard itself well, so that it will cease the samudaya that overlays the senses and sense perceptions. It will cease the samudaya overlaying the attributes of the mind and Dhamma, seeing, knowing, looking. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself, well with it. Let's proceed simultaneously together. Use disregard even from the disregard itself to conclude onwards, child. There's a lot of samudaya and desire that overlays, being obsessed to give significance and meanings that overlaying senses and sense perceptions. It's a lot there. Therefore, disregard even from the disregard itself continuously. This will be the conclusion towards ending, to continue onwards. That which has nothing to do with the disregard itself, use it as a conclusion to purify onwards. Let's continue to give ending to the samudaya. Simultaneously, within and without. Let's end simultaneously for the internal and the external, not to become samudaya within and without. Nothing is within and without. No significance and meanings internally and externally simultaneously. The enlightenment and the blessing proceed simultaneously. So that it will be simultaneously non-attachment altogether for the internal and the external. If there is disregard from the disregard itself, there will be no attachment within and without simultaneously, automatically. Uninvolved with the disregard, all the same, no attach even to the non-attachment itself. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself, all the same to everything, child. No attach even to the non-attachment itself. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself, child. Simultaneously proceed in the way that is uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself, then the non-attachment will not fixated to itself. Internally or externally, it will not be about not being about fixation to itself simultaneously. Uninvolved within the uninvolved itself. Uninvolved within the uninvolved itself. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself. This is the implication of the conclusion of Nirodha and Nibbana. It's the same thing. Disregard even from the disregard itself, simultaneously within and without. This will be automatic purification of the extinction. It will not be about oneself and all things. Disregard even from the disregard itself will not be about oneself and all things simultaneously. Cutting the knowing and the blessing is simultaneous. The non-attachment and the blessing is simultaneous for the internal and the external. Disregard even from the disregard itself, child. The disregard that is not itself. non-attached even to the non-attachment itself more consistently. This is the extinction that purifies itself, and it will continue more often. Let's continue to purify through the extinction internally and externally. This will give ending to the samudaya internally and externally simultaneously. So continue to purify through the disregard, even from the disregard itself. It will give ending to the samudaya automatically. Let's conclude through Nirodha and Nibbana. Disregard, even from the disregard itself. Continue onwards, well with it. This will give ending to the samudaya for the internal and the external simultaneously. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, is not about anything within itself. Well with it. This is the disregard doesn't grasp itself, nothing within it. It is the state that doesn't grasp itself, the attributes of the mind that doesn't grasp itself. The terminologies don't grasp themselves. The disregard doesn't grasp itself. Well with it. Listen well to it. Otherwise, it will be indirect by the Tithi. Tithi will lead oneself to go indirectly. Disregard, even from the disregard itself. This will give ending to the samudaya for the internal and the external. In other words, it's called conclusion of Nirodha. Otherwise, the samudaya will be straying a lot. Desire and delusion will overlay looking, seeing and knowing, recalling feelings, emotions, and the verbal. It will be a lot, straying a lot. Samudaya will stray a lot. The samudaya means the cause of suffering itself. And the cause of suffering is itself the suffering. It's not just the cause, but it is the suffering in itself as well. It's both the causes of suffering and the suffering in the cause itself. This is the samudaya. The samudaya is the delusion to fixate, to hold on. It is the desire, delusion, and delusive attachments. The attributes of giving significance and meanings and involvement is the attributes of the desire. The desire within the states of mind, within knowing, within seeing. The desire within all things, within aggregates, body and mind and Dhamma. This is all about samudaya. All these significance and meanings and involvements. Disregard, even from the disregard itself. Non-attached, even to the non-attachment itself. This means that the non-attachment doesn't grasp itself. All that is said is not even meaning anything. It's just the reflection of the non-attachment.
หยัดเดียวก็ยังไม่ใช่เลยลูกประโยคเดียว
Even one terminology, even one sentence
เนี่ยสรุปให้มาเรื่อยๆเนี่ยแค่สะท้อนให้ฟัง
cannot be taken into account at all. It's just a reflection. แต่ให้เปิดด้วยนะ However, just open up.
อย่าให้ตัวเอามันซ้อน
Don't let the grasping mind overlay, trying to enable to disregard. This is still grasping the disregard. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, is not about dwelling within the disregard or trying to disregard. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, it means that the disregard doesn't grasp itself, is not relevant to itself. In other words, there is no significance to the disregard itself. Simultaneously with the existence of the senses and sense perceptions, then there will be simultaneous cutting, which is called cutting the knowing simultaneously, cut through simultaneously on its own. ทั้งที่มันไม่ใช่อะไรเนี่ยแต่ทำไมต้องพูด It's not about anything while saying or reflecting, because there is something still giving significance and involvement. That which is not about anything as it is. It's not about anything as it is. Even the disregard doesn't mean anything either. Even the non-attachment has no meaning in itself either. Why we have to say and share this essence is because there is significance and meanings that is given to that which has no meanings. That's why it creates samsara of the samudaya. Samsara of the delusive attachments, always attempting to fixate. Samsara of desire, being obsessed to give meanings and significance and involvements, always being deluded to give meaning and significance on and on. That's why it turns into samsara. That's why there must be something that has to be said, has to be reflected without grasping onto it. Simultaneous cutting has no options at all. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, has no options whether it is internally or externally. Then there will be simultaneous cutting between the senses and the objects of perceptions. There are already the connections automatically. Mind and all things, they already having the connection. Therefore, you don't have to manage internally or externally. There is no need to choose anything. It has to be simultaneous. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, simultaneously. There is no need to choose to cut inside or outside. Cutting the cutter itself. There is no need to cut within and without. Cut through simultaneously altogether. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, means cutting the cutter itself. That's why there is simultaneous cutting for the internal and the external. Cut through the cutting itself. If you choose to cut the internal or the external, one still deceives oneself. This is using the delusion to cut something. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, this is not about using the disregard to disregard something. Disregard from the disregard itself, child. The disregard doesn't have any significance in itself, actually. With this, it will be direct to that which is not about anything within being direct. Being aligned with the conclusion of Nirodha and Samsara. Nirodha and Nibbana for Samsara. There is no need to choose whether it's inside or outside. There is already the connection. We just have to conclude through the essence of the cutting within the cutting itself, uninvolved within the uninvolved itself, no fixation to the non-fixation itself. That's it. Automatically, there will be no fixation to the internal and the external. Let's not be going indirectly. Even being direct has nothing within itself. Even one sentence is not it, not about significance in it. Within such a sentence, disregard even from the disregard itself. This will end all significance and meanings. It will be softened down and decrease automatically. All that desire, whether it's long or short, the delusive attachment within and without, will be decreased automatically. Naturally, there will be no delusive attachment. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, is ceasing within the ceasing itself, cutting within the cutting itself. This is not about cutting something or ceasing something, because there is an attempt to do that. Cutting within the cutting itself is already ceasing immediately. This is not about cutting something. That's why there is total cutting for the internal and the external automatically. There's always an issue to say, to reflect every day, because there is something. There is an issue. That kind of giving significance and meanings and involvements, even a tiny bit of that, it's already like being careless. It's like giving significance to that which has no meanings, because it is the circling of samsara. That's why there must be a reflection. Ending is already there. But something doesn't yield towards ending. That's why there must be a continuation of the reflection. Samsara doesn't yield to end. Still continue as samsara. That's why there must be a conclusion towards ending to be reflected on and on. Because samsara at large, in some parts, they don't yield towards ending. That's why there must be a conclusion towards ending for them continuously until it will be yield towards nibbana, and samsara will end at that point. They must listen to the conclusion of nirodha and nibbana. This is not about disregard from something, child. Disregard from the disregard itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself. You must listen to the same thing, but it's clearer, huh? What is that? Huh? You listen to the same sentences because it purifies the delusion that dominates, purify the desire that function as the task to create the obscure and confusion.
พอมันยุติตัณหาไป
Once the desire is continued to
ไม่ใช่
end,
ประโยคเดิมๆ
it become clearer. But it's actually reflected through the same old sentences. But it's just softened down all the desire that creates the obscure and the delusive attachment that is stagnated and being clung to is released and softened down. That's why it seems clearer than before. But it's the same old sentences. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, this is not about attempting to disregard something. Disregard the disregard itself. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, non-attached, even to the non-attachment itself. This is not about attempting to disregard from something, because it's going to be a rejection. The opposition which proceeds altogether in such a way. This is not about the rejection or acceptation or choosing anything. Disregard, even from the disregard itself. This is the conclusion of Nirodha, which means that the ceasing of the samudaya. It will not be about anything within the attachment or detachment automatically. It's not about someone who is attached or detached automatically. It is not about something that is attempting to attach or detach. Let's conclude as such. Naturally, there will be nothing that is attempting to attach or detach. Disregard, even from the disregard itself. This is not about attempting to disregard from something. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, we cut all the system of the mind. Disregard from the disregard itself is the cutting within the cutting itself. Don't step on ants. Don't dwell within your mind. That which is not about non-attachments, that which is not relevant to the non-attachments itself, that which has nothing to do with the non-attachment. Don't be obsessed to use the mind towards all things. Disregard even from the disregard itself simultaneously. Let there be the essence of the purification of the extinction towards samsara. Use that which has nothing to do with the non-attachment. Proceed onwards. This is the essence of the purification of the extinction and the emptiness. To use the seer towards all things is a crude thing. To use the knower is still a crude thing. That which has nothing to do with disregard or not, disregard even from the disregard itself altogether. This will purify through the extinction for the crude, for the subtleties. Using knowing and seeing towards all things, it is still an attribute, still the cause towards one another. Use that which is not about anything towards all and everything. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Nothing is within the disregard or not. This is the purification of the extinction and the emptiness. Don't project your mind towards Long Po. Don't create consecration from your mind. When you project the mind on something, it's like doing the consecration. The karma will bounce back to oneself. Use the disregards with the disregard altogether. This will be the brightness to the brightness. More of that which has nothing to do with the non-attachment, to use the projecting mind towards seeing, looking and knowing is crude, so that there will be purification of the extinction and emptiness that continues onwards. Don't try to use the mind towards all things, child. Continue to use the disregard from itself and unroll within itself, so that there will be simultaneous purification of the extinction altogether. To use the mind, it will be the samudaya that overlays on top of samsara, on and on. Use that which has nothing to do with the non-attachment. Non-attached even from the non-attachment itself continuously. This will turn into automatic purification of the extinction. Disregard even from the disregard itself, all the same to everything. Non-attached even to the non-attachment itself. This is not about attempting to non-attach or not towards anything at all. Extinguish the attempt to distinguish, to extinguish itself, cutting that doesn't grasp itself, cut through itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself, it doesn't grasp itself. This will be true disregard. The true disregard is not about attempting to disregard. And use this essence for the internal and external simultaneously. Don't use only the mind towards all things. There will only be karmic difficulties of the mind. Uninvolved within the uninvolved itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself. If there is the rejection towards anything, just give no significance and meanings to it, so that there is no delusion to it.
เคไปเดี๋ยวรับอาหาร
Recall the sentence disregard even from the disregard itself. What is there is bygone in itself. The consciousness is there more or less is already there.
ใช่มันไปได้ยังไงก็มันมีอยู่จริงๆมันมีอยู่แล้วมันมีคู่กันนั่นแหละเข้าใจไหมคำว่าสัมปชัญญะเนี่ยมันคือมันไม่ใช่แค่แปลว่ารู้สึกตัวทั่วพร้อมนะ
Consciousness is not just about
รู้
total
ว่าเราตื่นรู้ว่าข้างนอกข้างในมัน
total consciousness.
ที่มันมีอยู่แล้ว
Actually, the awakening within and without already exists, but you have to
มีแบบไม่ยึดเนี่ย
have the awareness or consciousness in the way without fixation to it, because in its nature there is no fixation to itself anywhere.
แต่นี่เราเนี่ยพยายามจะฝึกเอาพยายาม
When you try to practice for obtaining the awareness, it's wrong because you try to fixate to it.
ไปนั่งมานั่ง
It's used temporarily, not to maintain it. There is no need to cling to it. When you sleep, you don't maintain the mindfulness. You have to put it down, right?
ว่างเลยแค่ดำริว่าจะตื่น
Put it down.
เดี๋ยวมันนอนแล้วไม่ตื่นแค่ก่อนนอนก็ดำริว่าจะตื่น
Just
ตอนไหนก็ดำริ
you can
ตีสี่แล้วตีห้าหรือว่าตีหนึ่ง
assume a thought to remind yourself the time when you want to wake up. That's all. So you will wake up at that time.
แสดงว่ามันพอไงแสดงว่ามันนอนพอ
And you will have enough sleep.
เดี๋ยวนี้ไม่ต้องกินหลวงพ่อเนี่ยพอดำริจะพักผ่อนนอนก็หลับไม่ยากไม่ต้องกินยา
Long Po give example when Long Po needs to sleep.
ของท่านพอ
Long Po just form the thoughts to rest, and it will stop. It will rest by itself.
ประเภทไม่แบก
This has no
พอ
burden
ตื่น
to the
มันติดตัว
awakening. If there is fixation to mindfulness awakening to the insight, it's impossible to sleep because there is a fixation to it.
ใช้จนติด
Use it until there is fixation to it. So disregard even from the disregard itself.
เวลาใช้ก็ประโยชน์ขึ้น
So whenever you need to use it, you just form it up.
นี่ก็ตื่นอยู่เรื่อยๆนะนี่ตีไหนเป็นตีไหนช่วงนี้ก็ตีสามเป็นเรื่องปกติก็ต้องตื่นตื่นเองแหละอนุภาพมันลิงหาย
At the moment, Long Po wakes up about 3 a.m. and it's automatic.
หลวงพ่อนอนง่ายพักผ่อนง่าย
For Long Po, he can sleep easily,
ต้องตื่นขึ้นมา
but he has to wake up
โผล่ตรงนั้นตรงนี้
to bless here and there
เรียกร้องอ่ะ
because there are a lot of
กลุ่มนั้นกลุ่มนี้เรียกร้องรอบกุฏิรอบที่พักรอบวิหาร
a lot of beings around his
ลุกขึ้นมา
residential kuti.
เดินล่างช่วย
So Long Po has to get up and bless, pour water to bless them, and then he can rest.
มันมีจะมีแบบหน้าต่าง
It's there. The consciousness is there, but it's there without grasping it.
ก็ไม่เอาไปในทาง
It doesn't grasp itself. The anatta doesn't grasp itself. The anicca doesn't grasp itself either.
ทำไมต้องมี
Why is there having to have or not have? Can it be in a way that is automatic without binding
ไป
it?
มัดมันเนี่ยมันผิด
Whenever you tie it up, it's
มั
wrong.
ดในสิ่งที่มันไม่ผูก
Whenever you bind something that is not about binding,
มันมี
fixating towards that which is not about fixation is wrong. Mindfulness, concentration, contemplation, or any types of dharma is there, but it's there in the way of
พ
anicca.
ยายามจะมี
This is not
มีเหมื
with
อนกันมีแบบแล้ว
in the way with the purpose. It's there, but it's there in the way
แล้วมันจะไม่ผิดเลยต่อความ
of bygone be bygone. Then it will not be wrong to the non-attachment.
ยึดเอาไว้ทรง
If there is fixation, maintaining mindfulness, concentration, contemplation, special insight, or maintaining any types of dharma, that's it. It will turn into the 32 realms of existence. You have to follow cutting the knowing. It's there in the way of Nijjang and Anatta without grasping it. It is as it is. It is bygone within itself. But whenever you practice for attainment, it's not bygone. You don't yield to the essence of the bygone. So the knower and the seer or recalls or thoughts is there, but it's bygone in itself. There is no burden in it. Therefore, you don't need to be concerned with what is there or not. It's anatta all the same. The mindfulness is anicca and anatta in itself. The mindfulness is suffering in itself. The sati has the state of dukkha in itself. So those who practice mindfulness for attainment, they just entrap the suffering because they maintain it. That's why it's called entrapment of suffering. It's not fixated even in itself. Mindfulness or Dhamma has no fixation to itself in its nature. But whenever you fixate to it, where you derive from? Persistence, stubbornly persisting. Disregard, even from the disregard itself altogether. This will turn into no fixation to no fixation. It will not be wrong to Nirodha and Nibbana. It will not be wrong to the Satchidhamma. Why it has to be fixation or no fixation? Because no fixation is not fixated to itself. Anatta is not fixated to itself. Anicca is not fixated to itself as it is. Why do you have to not fixate it again? This is the delusion. Why you have to attempt to fixate or not fixate again in a new way. Everything is anicca and anatta and is not fixated to itself as it is without any exception. Whether it is the mind, knower or seer, fabrication of the mind, feelings, emotions, any states are anatta in themselves. It discards in its nature as it is. Why you have to not fixate it to itself again? This is a delusion. Deludedly fixated or not fixated. That's why there is a path. It creates a path. It's the desire that is, and the delusion that walks a path. It doesn't stop itself. That's why it's become variations of path. This is going too far. Why you have to attempt to be attached or detached in a new way? Even the uninvolved, even the disregard, even the non-attachment is not itself. Even know is not know itself. Even the uninvolved is uninvolved with itself as it is. Why you have to involve or uninvolve in a new way again? Because of the delusion. Why do you have to try to attach or detach in a new way again? Because of the delusion. It's the delusion. Because the disregard is as it is. The uninvolved is as it is. Anicca or anatta is as it is. Anicca is not fixated to itself as it is. Anatta is not fixated to itself as it is in its nature. That's why there is the sentence that ends in itself. Disregard, even from the disregard itself altogether. Uninvolved, even within the uninvolved itself, altogether.
อย่าพยายามที่จะคอยติดหรือ
Don't try to be attached or detached from anything. Don't.
ใช่สิ่งที่ไม่เกี่ยวกับติดกันหลุด
That which has nothing to do with attachment or detachment, ending is right
อร
there.
หันต์ที่ไม่ใช่อรหันต์
This is the arahant that is not meaning arahant.
อรหันต์ที่ไม่มีความหมายของความเป็นอรหันต์
The arahant that has no meaning as arahants. นะฟังเนาะฟังจะจบเนี่ยดีนะ Just listen to that which is giving ending to itself.